Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Prodigal Son. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Well, first and foremost, we're kind of picking up with like the Malcolm and Eve situation. Even more time has kind of passed, and I thought we were just straight up dealing with where things were left off, her trying to find out where Sophie is and everything. But it turns out, no, she actually sent him a voicemail saying, don't come looking for me, and broke up with him. And obviously he had to play that for Ainsley because Ainsley's like, no, play it for me. He's like, I'm not going to play my breakup for you. And she's like, no, do it. Because she's like, I'm a woman and you might have missed some of the subtleties of like, maybe there was something else there. Like as a woman, I'll probably be able to catch it that you weren't able to catch it. He plays it and she's like, no, that's actually pretty clear cut. That was a clear cut breakup. At the same time, Nicholas comes out, which is awkward because we know Nicholas is the bad guy. They don't know it yet. But the fact is Nicholas is sitting down being like, oh yeah, your mom wanted me to be a big secret and stuff like that. But they're like, good coffee, blah, 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 and kind of bounces. And it's like, oh, that's weird. It's like, good for mom. But even Ainsley's like, yeah, it's the business that Nicholas runs, there's some kind of shady stuff behind it. But nevertheless, Malcolm gets called in, and everyone's giving the weird eyes at work, and I'm like, what the hell is that all about? He's like, what's that all about? And it's like, oh, it's about Eve. He's like, yeah, I know, we broke up. I'm sure you're worried about me, but I'm okay. It's like, Eve's dead. I was like, what? I was like, I didn't see that coming. I mean, of course it makes sense. She was snooping in some areas she didn't have any business snooping, so it makes sense, but it still kind of caught me off guard. I was like, wait, what? But then it's like, oh no, she killed herself. It looks like suicide. And so Malcolm goes to see Adrisa, and Adrisa doesn't know they have a connection. She doesn't know who Eve is and everything. So she's like, oh, Malcolm, hey, I didn't know I don't have anything for you. It's like, oh yeah, this lady. It's like, and he's like, her name is Eve. It's like, oh, you knew her. And so for Malcolm, looking at everything, it's like, he immediately, it's like, oh yeah, like she's been dead for like 2 weeks, and Malcolm's like, she never even left the city. So for him, it's like she was murdered before, like after, like she was going to go off and look for Sophie, is when she got murdered because she started asking too many questions, you know. So I guess that was so I'm either saying that voicemail was something that was she was forced to leave, or that is something she said before she did leave town. Whatever the case may be. Well, before she was planning on leaving town. And obviously he brings this up to Gil, JT, and Danny, but they're kind of chalking it up a little bit like, oh, you're grieving. He's like, I get it. I know what it sounds like, but for him, it's like, I'm not going to be sidelined on the case, not on this one, so it's too important to him. So then there's the awkward situation of Nicholas being there for his mom, consoling Jessica when she hears about the news about Eve. And so Malcolm, goes to talk to his mom about, but it's like, no, she was murdered, but the only person who would know why is Martin. So they go to visit Martin, and lo and behold, who's there? Ainsley. And it's like, and he's like, look at this, a family reunion. It's like, yeah, this is interesting. This is the first time all three of you have been there to meet him at the same time. It's always either been Malcolm alone, or Malcolm and Ainsley, or Ainsley kind of on her own, or Jessica on her own, or Malcolm and Jessica, never all three. So this is quite the family reunion. It is a spectacular moment in itself. It's just like, wait, why are you here, Ainsley? It's like, well, it turns out Eve's sister Sophie actually worked for Nicholas's company. And then like Jessica's like, wait, what? No, that doesn't make any sense, because it's like, no, that can't be. And then Malcolm pieces it together. That's what this has all been about. That's the information. That's the bad person that Sophie told you about to make you spare her life, but also what gave you this position, like why you're in such a comfy cell and stuff like that, because you made a deal with Nicholas. He has the connections and stuff like that. And obviously it's a hard thing for Jessica. Once again, it's like, she needs to talk about this later on. It's like she thought she found someone, like after all the crap with Martin, she thought she found someone, because she even says it later on, like she thought she found someone that was a widower who was just as broken as she was. She thought she found someone, but it turns out she found another sociopath. So it's like another terrible human being, because Martin talks about the fact is that the way Sophie talks about it is that basically you don't say no to Nicholas. You always have to say yes to him. And so for her, it's like he took her in, pulled her off the street, gave her a job, gave her a position and everything. But it's always like, yes. So she did a lot of terrible stuff for him over and over again. And eventually it became too much and she couldn't take it anymore. So she became a liability, which also means in the grand scheme of things, unless he ended up getting her, which I doubt that is the case, that means Sophie's still out there, sadly. That means in the grand scheme of things, she's going to have to find out, like, she left to protect Eve, and now it's like, oh, you find out that even despite all your best attempts, your sister is dead, you know? That's the real sad aspect to the situation is like, you know, it's like just when Eve found out her sister was alive and everything, and now that, you know, it's a lot. So obviously it's this whole situation of like, you know, obviously, and I even love him being like, oh, let's not dive into the past. Let's not focus on the past. Let's leave the past in the past. Let's focus on our family right now, which Jessica kind of makes it clear, like, tell us what we want to know, because if you don't, we are no family. We're just people that are tied to you on a genetic, by blood. If it wasn't for that, we'd have no connection to you. So if you want us to keep coming to you at all, you know, and you don't get left here alone, you'll tell us what's kind of going down. So obviously for Malcolm, he wants to try it because someone like Nicholas doesn't get his hands dirty. He's going to hire someone to do it. So Malcolm is going to find the assassin, get them to turn on Nicholas, which even and I thought it was interesting where Martin was like, Malcolm, I forbid you. I am still your father. And he was yelling, kind of being all authoritative and stuff like that. And it's like, oh, look at you. I mean, I get it. It's coming from a place of concern because you don't want your son mixed up in all of this. But then, like, he kind of takes this low jab at Jessica. It's like, oh, good thing you never say no, huh, Jessica? And she just kind of walks away from it. So Adrisa ends up turning out, because it also seems like basically Adrisa ended up talking about the fact is that, admitting that it's drowning would mean that she crossed off every other, like, potential cause of death. So, but she ends up getting a call from, like, someone higher up to be like, oh, why haven't you turned this into a suicide? Why haven't you labeled this as a suicide yet? Showing that people from higher up are touting her just to kind of close this immediately. Showing that Nicholas is pushing his weight around. And obviously it's like, because it's even sadder. It's like, oh, like, basically she was drowned first with the evidence that Adrisa was able to find. It's like she was drowned first, then pushed off from a high enough place to land in the water to make it look like she jumped in and, you know, drowned in the river. So it's like, that's already just bad enough. And obviously, like, this case is very different from Malcolm because this is the most personal case that Malcolm's ever had. He's never had someone he cared about be, you know, the victim in this case. So obviously everyone's trying to, you know, be there for him, you know, in this time. And at the same time, you know, Ainsley is wanting to work to take down Nicholas because it's like he's a very bad guy. And obviously, once again, for Jessica, it's like, it's a situation of she's not, you know, scared of Nicholas. It's just kind of that situation of like I said earlier, that she had, that he basically fooled her, you know, and she kind of didn't see him for what he was. And, you know, Ainsley telling her mom, like, I promise you one thing, Mom, I'm going to take Nicholas down, you know, as a, you know, a journalist and everything, but also you're not owed, you know. So it was just kind of a nice, sweet moment between them. But, you know, obviously Ainsley running into Nicholas later on because she's trying to investigate him, but he's like, oh, why are you following me and stuff and like that? And he's like, oh, I get it because I'm, you know, he's like, I'm actually really fond of your mom and stuff like that. And it's just like, it makes him talking about her like that, just, it feels grosser and grosser, especially for Ainsley knowing what she knows. It's like, he's like, oh, you've got me in your corner and everything, so whatever positions you want and stuff like that, oh, you're gonna write up a piece about me and stuff like that, cool. You know, you can call on me, I'm in your corner, I can give you whatever you want. And notice Ainsley doesn't use the words no, like, oh, no, thank you. She just kind of smiles, almost accepting it, because I think she took what her dad said to heart of like, never say no to him, because the last thing you want to do is the moment you start saying no to him is when you start getting on his bad side. So there's that whole situation. But basically they need to track down, getting back to the case, they need to track down an assassin. And for Malcolm, he can't profile an assassin because, you know, they're kind of the hardest to, you know, profile, because Nicholas is one thing, but because he's not the one directly involved, that they need to find first to get to Nicholas with the whole assassin situation. So what ended up being interesting, though, is that basically there's a dude, Cyril, that Gil knows that it is an assassin, I guess, you know, for like the mob and mafia type of stuff. But it's like, oh, nothing ever stuck. So I guess he was never really, it's like, oh yeah, like he kind of got away with it. And so basically assassins know when other assassins are doing jobs in the city, because that way they don't want too many assassinations going on at the same time. They don't want too many assassination jobs kind of overlapping. So he introduces them to someone named Nightingale. And so basically they got to find her next target. But it's a room full of ladies fitting Nightingale's description. So it's like, how do we figure it out? Oh, here's her target. All right, I'm going to cause a commotion. Who's ever calm, that's the suspect. So Malcolm pulls out a knife. He's like, Comrade, is that you? And stabs him. I was like, did you actually stab him? I was like, oh, please don't tell me yet she stabbed him. He's like, oh, good, you didn't. You sprayed ketchup on it. I didn't love him like, all right, fall back, pretend like, scream like you're in agony and stuff like that. It'll save your life. And I love hearing the guy, Comrade. He's like, like, it's so terrible. I love it. But luckily they were able to track down Nightingale, which led into like a badass fight between her and Danny. Like Danny handcuffing her and flipping her over and has her like knee on her throat and everything. It's like, go Danny. And she's like, CIA. And Danny's like, no, NYPD. But Nightingale already made a call to the CIA because it's like, they wanted me for some work anyway. So basically the CIA is going to make her, quote unquote, disappear by me. It's like, you're going to work for us from now on. They're going to clear up anything. So this was kind of her get out of jail free card. Because obviously Malcolm is like, I get it. Like, what you did was, it's your profession. So he tries to, because obviously he's trying to begin to profile. But she's like, oh, you're a profiler? You can't profile me. And he's just trying to understand. But for her, it's like, no, I'm not the one that killed your Eve. She sounds like a great lady. It wasn't me. I've been so focused on going after Conrad. I haven't had time to go after anyone else. So, but whoever it was that killed Eve would have had to been someone that kept an eye on her for a long time. Like, because to be able to fake, to make something look like a suicide, it has to be someone that you're close enough with them to kind of know your patterns enough. So that's why I was like, it had to be. I was like, that's interesting. It had to be. So I was like, was it someone in her personal life or something? But it's like, no. It turns out because JT and Malcolm go to her apartment, her place, and obviously JT ends up talking about that situation of like, I think it was like basically one date. Like his wife wore these specific, like, what was it, like red shoes or something, and every time he sees them it brings him back to that moment. So what he was trying to insinuate was kind of like, the fact is Malcolm being in her place, like he's going to look at certain things and it's going to bring him back to that moment. He's just kind of like, I'm sorry, bro. And he lays down in the bed and you see him, he turns and he's kind of looking and thinking about him and Eve, but at the same time he's also thinking about her as a corpse. And it was just, but then they both noticed that there were cameras, someone had been watching Eve for how, they have no idea how long. But what was interesting though is they noticed a guy, but it was someone wearing white pants. It's like, does he like wearing white pants? He's also got his ears covered. And that's when it clicked into Malcolm's head that it's like, because he's trying to cover up his ears, and because they would distinguish him because he had wrestler's ear, like a cauliflower ear. And so it's like, it ends up being Eddie, the new dude that's looking after Martin. I had a feeling that was the case the moment like Martin was like, where Mr. David is. It's like, he's sick or something. I'm like, that was on purpose. And it's like, is it? It was like, because Eddie didn't seem like he was the dude, but it turns out he super is the dude, and he's trying to kill Martin. And luckily Malcolm and them got there in time. But like, while he's like choking Martin out, he's like, Dr. Whitley, and he says, Dad, and in that moment, it's almost like he got his dad's strength, and he's like, ugh, and he fall back and start kicking his ass, and he's like, this is for my son, like, kind of like uses his palm to kind of hit him in the face a little bit, and then starts digging into his eye sockets with his thumbs. I was like, oh God. Once again, I've talked about it time and time and again. I don't do well with eye stuff. I was like, this is gross. And then he comes, luckily they get in there and pull him off of him. And it's just like, you see this moment of just like Martin sitting on his bed, and just like almost like this rage that was in him, and it's almost like he's trying to come down, and just the look in his eyes. See, the thing is, Malcolm's never seen the murderous look in his father's eyes before, because anytime he's looking at his dad, it's like, I know what my dad has done. I know my dad is a serial killer, but he's never seen that look in his eye. He saw the murder in his dad's eyes in that moment. And that's what was just kind of like, holy shit. I think that's the first time he'd ever seen that, at least. And then, like, Danny was like, JT, you good? And he immediately goes, oh, so you're JT. And the look on JT's face is like, shit, he knows who I am. He knows the name. He knows the associate the name with the face. It doesn't matter if it's just the initials. He knows my initials. And he's like, oh, now I've seen the entire team. And he's like, you know, I mean, he's like, you know, it's lucky you got here in time, because he was, you know, what was it? He was attacking me. And Malcolm's like, yeah, almost like sarcastically saying, yeah, lucky we got here in time, huh? Because it's like, if we didn't, you would have ended up killing him. But for Malcolm, it's like, yeah, they caught Eddie and everything, but it's still not enough, because the fact is, it's still like, you know, he's going to get reduced time because he is actually the one that actually did kill Eve, and you know, there's nothing directly tying him, this Nicholas, to this. So it's just kind of like, there's no winning in this situation, and it's like, because the person who actually did it would get, you know, a deal or some sort. And what's also interesting is, like, we get a look in the past of Nicholas and Martin making their deal and everything. He's like, oh, do you think I will poison you? Of course I wouldn't. Which is interesting, and a very interesting detail is the wine he was giving to Ainsley present day is the same wine he was giving Martin back in 99. So it's like, that was interesting. I don't think he'd do something like poison Ainsley, but you can only figure at that time, because he went after Martin, he knows that they talked. So it must have been because Ainsley came to visit, because Ainsley was following him. It's like, oh, you came up with that cockamamie story of like, oh, you're doing an interview on me and everything, you want to do a piece on me. He's like, you know the truth about me. Jessica's probably avoided being around him, so it's like, oh, you all know the truth about me, because he wanted to try and spin it of like, oh, you know, after everything Martin put you through, I want good things for you, Jessica and Malcolm and you, Ainsley. So regardless of all of that, but it's like, to be fair, it kind of makes you worried at least a little bit, because you're like, that's the last time we saw Ainsley in an episode. They're probably overthinking it too much. I doubt she's dead or anything, but it's just like, part of me was wondering, you think he did anything to her? Like, might have kidnapped her or something, because she is. I mean, but it might not be the case. Well, because the thing is, in the past, it's like, oh, I need some insurances. For him, it's like, oh, I've committed crimes just like you have. He's like, so basically, if you ever spill the beans about me, I will destroy your family. I will take away all their riches, and I will destroy their reputation. And he's like, I will make love to your wife. And then he calmly sits down. And he's like, but it won't come to that. Which is interesting, because you went through the whole making love to her part beforehand. So I guess that was just kind of icing on the cake for him, essentially. I guess in a very psychotic way, he kind of came to like Jessica. Which I did like that whole moment between Jessica and Gil, because obviously there's definitely been chemistry. We've definitely seen it over the course of the show, but it seems like it existed even before now, because with his previous wife, who obviously we know passed away, because there was that whole thing back and forth, because, you know, it's like, because, you know, Jessica kind of felt like maybe, you know, almost kind of like she feels like maybe this is kind of what she deserves in some shape or form, which Gil is like, you know, because for her, it's like, maybe I was never, you know, because the reason why things never happened between her and Gil is because she felt like, oh, she wasn't good enough. But Gil was like, you have always been good enough. But then it's just kind of like a thing of like, oh, I guess we missed our moment. She's like, yeah, I missed our moment, you know, because for her, that's why, she like kind of pushed him away by saying stuff like, oh, we're from two different worlds, which he was like, yeah, we are. But it's like, she more so pushed him away because she didn't think, I think this was probably after what they're probably referencing is like Gil and Jessica's thing potentially started after the whole Martin thing. It was probably around that time. And then he eventually met his wife. But regardless, you know, and then we see that moment at the end where they do kiss, because you're like, finally, because like I said, it's been something that's been bubbling the entire time, but still. Then there's the whole situation with Malcolm. He went to go visit Eddie, but at the time of him visiting Eddie, we never get to see like, oh, what he actually did, you know, so... But he's back at home and he's kind of being haunted by Eve. He's just like, I want you to go. The police bust into his place because there was DNA found on Eddie and he's dead. Skin cell and hair. And Malcolm's like, no, that's not possible. It's like, it's too much for them to ignore, so they have to arrest Malcolm. So it's like doing what he promised he was going to do. He was going to destroy their family. So it's like how he managed to do that. I mean, we do know he has powerful allies, so he could have easily gotten a dirty cop to do it. You know, or maybe paid off like a nurse or a doctor or somebody to do something like that, to get close enough to him to do something like that, but and framing Malcolm in the process. So probably next time we catch up, he probably destroyed Ainsley's reputation, maybe got her fired, which would be ironic because the whole thing was about, helping her. I mean, once again, he was talking about how he was going to make them all happy. So I guess that was him kind of just being like, now that I know that you guys are, like, that was him kind of setting the scene of like, how he's basically going to destroy them. So he's going to come after Ainsley and Jessica next, kind of destroying their names in some shape or form. But it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. Next episode is, in fact, the season finale. It's going to be crazy to see how this ultimately ends up playing out. Because I'm curious, like, what did happen between Malcolm and Eddie that we never got to see? We'll find out next episode, but it's just going to be like, because obviously he's a perfect suspect, because it's like, well, you were super pissed when you left. Danny can attest to that. Plus, this is a guy that killed someone that was important to you, and it's all going to look like you did it. So I'm also curious to see what role Martin's going to play in all of this when they're trying to take down someone as powerful as Nicholas, because there's not going to be any evidence, because obviously all loose ends, any ties to him has been dealt with Eddie's death. So I'm so curious to see how this all ends up playing out in the season finale. But really, that's all I want to talk about today. Next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.